Welcome back to the Kyber Collective. I'm one of your three hosts, Sig, and I'm joined by Flowers.
Hello.
And Annie.
Hello.
Today, we're tackling A New Hope.
So what we're going to do today is I have done some research. So I'm going to do my little book report on some of the stuff behind the making of A New Hope. And then I've got a handful of kind of thematic stuff that I thought we could talk about, reminisce about how good this movie is. And then we'll do the lightning round at the end. And mostly what I have are what I think are really cool quotes from George Lucas. So I was reading The Making of Star Wars, which is a book that I highly recommend if you have a lot of time on your hands and want to read some cool stuff about how Star Wars came about. Especially the art stuff, like the storyboarding and art design that are in it are really, really incredible. And there are some hilarious pictures of Darth Vader's development. The original concept had him wearing a hat, which just sends me, I picture like Cad Bane level hats, so just like this comically large cowboy hat on Darth Vader, and I can't.
I thought of like a baseball cap just now.
Darth Vader in a baseball cap.
Are you winning, son?
Yeah, that was the original. Before it was a mask, they were like, "Oh, we'll just have him in a really big hat."
Oh my gosh, that's like Spaceballs kind of stuff.
Yeah, a lot of this like early concept stuff has that energy in a big way. It just, there's some really delightful kind of stories of the stuff they were thinking of when they were making it, including the original Mace Windu, who is one of the original characters for Star Wars, well before the prequels.
Wow.
Mace Windu and his student was the original kind of draft that they put together of. George Lucas wrote this thing called the Journal of the Wills. So the Wills actually date back to then as well. And It was about Mace Windu and his student, which, tickles me.
That's charming. I love
that. So one of the things that kind of jumps out is a couple. So we'll start with this idea of modern mythology, because George Lucas talks a lot about it in his development of Star Wars. And he originally had the rights to Flash Gordon, which is a space serial, which you might be familiar with, might not. It's quite old now. And he said basically, when you're dealing with anything that's established, he said, you start out by being faithful to the original material, but eventually it gets in the way of creativity. I knew I could do something totally new. I wanted to take ancient mythological motifs and update them. And I wanted to have something free and fun, the way that I remembered space fantasy. And coming at the project, he started entirely from this idea of wanting to create mythology. He was really into anthropology at the time. And he said specifically that he worried about the absence of stories for young people that were fables or mythology. And he said that they needed the sort of fantasy that said basically there is good and there is evil. Try to be good.
That's brilliant.
Love that.
Which is, yes, essentially what Star Wars wound up saying.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And why we care about it so much. It has that draw.
Yeah. And of course, he also became familiar with The Hero with a Thousand Faces and started deliberately basing drafts of the script on this idea of the Joseph Campbell's idea, basically, of what mythological stories are shaped like, and they have a very specific structure. And
the hero's journey.
The hero's journey, yeah. And he started following that, which is where Kenobi turns up as the old wizard, who originally was prepared to teach how to use the Force in exchange for food, and later became Luke's mentor. So I guess where I wanted to start was thinking about this. How successful do we think it is as a piece of modern mythology, if you're thinking about A New Hope? And specifically, what do we think about mythology? What makes a mythological story different?
I think it succeeded. And it has A New Hope as a whole story has the complete journey almost packed inside this movie. And I think it does a good job in showing being confronted with a choice, having something fantastical happen to you, battling against good versus evil, and ultimately succeeding with the help of your trusted friends. I think it has the elements that I know as a child I was immediately drawn to. It has characters that you can root for, and it has don't want to say easy, but like a simple enough story that even when it gets more and more complicated as time goes on, and it's you're able to absorb it quite easily. Because like the space fantasy has stormtroopers, and it has starships, it has a Star Destroyer, it has a Death Star, it has the Empire, but all of these big fantastical things all boil down to a very understandable structure that we as people can understand and relate to.
Yeah.
So I think it definitely succeeds in the mission that George Lucas had.
I think it 100% succeeds because the movie was made in, 1977? And here we're talking about it in the year 2022. So, and it's now like $7 billion, IP. Yeah. It's definitely resonated with millions of people.
Yeah.
And I can't think of another fandom that has so many different kinds of people, like so many different demographics. Everybody finds something in Star Wars. It's quite amazing, actually. I can't think of anything else that's like it.
I think that's kind of it, is the kind of universality of what's being told. And if you took spaceships out of it, it would be really easy to describe this as, for example, some kind of medieval story, because it's a wizard and a young farmer go to rescue a princess along with a pirate.
This is exactly how Mark Hamill described it in that interview.
From a fortress. And that, the setting is almost... the nature of the story is really, really universal. It's the kind of stories we've been telling for a really, really long time. And, that you have this mentor who teaches this boy how to trust himself and find something within him that he needs to defeat evil, or storm the castle or the Death Star in this case, is such a universal kind of story of growing up, of finding who you are and what you're capable of. And I think when I was reading this, the thoughts that went into creating Star Wars, a couple things kind of dovetailed with that quite nicely. One of which is that he wanted the science fiction elements to be unobtrusive. So set design was designed to look like a functioning world. Like, instead of having an aesthetic for each place, you would look like things had been brought from other places. So there's a bit of a mixed aesthetic that you would kind of naturally get in a living, breathing space. But that it would also be unobtrusive, so that you wouldn't go, wow, that design of that laser gun was really cool. You just remember that it was a laser gun, but it just looked like something functional, with a handful of exceptions.
Yeah. But that's pretty brilliant. That's a really great thinking process.
Yeah.
In the design of the world.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it kind of makes the bits that he did design really specifically stand out, because the other big theme of this comes from the project that he was working on sort of concurrently with Star Wars, which was Apocalypse Now. And Apocalypse Now heavily influenced Star Wars. And there's a fantastic quote. A lot of my interest in Apocalypse Now, said George Lucas, was carried over into Star Wars. I figured I couldn't just make that film because it was about the Vietnam War. So I'd essentially deal with some of the same interesting concepts that I was going to use and convert them into space fantasy. So you'd have essentially a large technological empire going after a small group of freedom fighters or human beings. And I think that's really clear in the way that we look at design, because the empire is the place where it's incredibly uniform, where everything is designed under a specific aesthetic. There is no humanity. And it's interesting to me that he describes the freedom fighters, which in this case are the Viet Cong, not the Americans, obviously, as specifically freedom fighters or human beings, as separate from kind of the technology in the empire, of which the most obvious example is Darth Vader, who is barely human. And I think that kind of thought process seems to carry over. And that's another quite driving man versus technology, again, is, I think, a really, really specific modern mythology kind of point that you would bring in, is mythology for a modern age.
Yeah.
I don't even have words. That was just...
That was pretty brilliant.
Thought process.
Go ahead.
I know, that was it. The thought process.
Sorry, I thought you were...
I've disappointed everybody with this.
No, not at all. Not at all. I feel like if George Lucas would have been made a movie about the Vietnam War and the Americans were the bad guys and the freedom fighters were the Viet Cong, a lot of people would have had a lot of opinions about that. They wouldn't have enjoyed the movie. I also I remember reading about how Palpatine was basically Richard Nixon. Or he was inspired by Richard Nixon, and damn, that's a pretty bold statement. So he was able to tell this story through this space opera that reached a lot more people. I know that more people went to see it than would have if it would have been about the Vietnam War.
Yeah. And I think it goes back to what you said at the very beginning, or when I asked about mythology, and you said, I mean, it's a film made in the 70s that we're still watching today. It's also a film made about the Vietnam War in some ways.
Yeah.
That we're still watching today. And it's managed to transcend that specific conflict, but I think remains quite a universal idea of fascists or empire or technology or whatever you want to call it against.
Yeah, it could be so many different wars. It could be so many different situations, and that's what makes it so great is that everybody can relate to it. It's a story that's been told over and over and over.
It is, and it's
again.
a very human story. These are things that we have seen in our lifetime, or our parents or grandparents have seen in their lifetimes. It's very relevant to not just experiences, but the human condition. And also about how there's always this desire for hope, a new hope even.
Yeah, and I did want to touch on that as well. You read my mind, because I think the idea of hope is incredibly important when you have, I mean, the film begins with the destruction of Alderaan, which is horrific if you take any time to think about what's actually happening there, the level of violence. And you start off with the Empire destroying an entire planet, but also destroying two of the people that we've come to know through Luke's family. And to come out of that feeling as hopeful as you do at the end of A New Hope. It is fundamentally a story about growth and hope and overcoming obstacles, and doesn't feel dark despite how dark it is. Yeah.
No, despite one of the first, like you said, the first things we see is Leia and the destruction of Alderaan right before her eyes. You see Luke, his aunt and uncle, horrifically murdered. You even see the Jawas murdered, which I think don't get enough attention. Those poor little things also took one.
Justice for Jawas.
So you have justice for Jawas. So you see so much destruction, so much death, and you see the ability and the ruthlessness of the Empire. And in these conditions, you're given a sense of hope by the end of it, because you can triumph, you can make a difference. Even a farm boy can make a difference in the galaxy.
Yeah. And I think that's something specific to folklore. I mean, I've struggled to think of a definition that I might use that would define folklore and mythology as separate from other forms of storytelling. But I think it having to do with the nature of humanity might be where I would put the dividing line, and specifically about the growth of you as a person, which is something that this fits really well into, because they're about communities and how we should act. I actually kind of like George Lucas's definition of it being a story for children that says, here's good and here's bad and here's how you should behave.
I saw I saw these movies as a kid, and I was like, yes, this makes complete sense. You were rooting for the people who were being good, who were not causing mass destruction and murder, and people who were fighting for something good, who were trying to give hope in their community and trying to do the right thing. That's what you get at the end of the day. And if kids can get that message, I think George Lucas completely won that. He did succeed.
Yeah, and he got everybody's imaginations running.
Oh yeah,
definitely.
There were many make-believe laser fights between me and my family.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Yeah, there's something so well done about the visual way that fighting is done in this. I mean, obviously we're drawing on the kind of samurai Kurosawa. In fact, I think he explicitly wanted Obi-Wan to be Japanese for a while. And then you have the Western influences, obviously, when you're looking at the blasters and the way Han Solo does literally anything. And both of those are like fantasy fighting, like, aspirational, the kind of thing that you do in your backyard. You get out your samurai sword, or you get out your fake gun and you play, like cowboys or whatever. Yeah. There is, for being something that is set in outer space, it's phenomenally visually grounded in things that are really familiar, which is why I think it's so easy to like step in and inhabit it and have that sense of imagination.
You can kind of jump in there and be like, this is a world I can be a part of, and I am going to strike down my family member with this paper roll sword. Notably, I was always a Jedi, but like,
yeah,
sometimes you gotta let your dark side out.
Are you sure that your lightsaber wouldn't be red?
I was pretty sure it was going to be blue. But...
yeah. You just need to say you're defending someone. I mean, Obi-Wan chops a dude's arm off, so...
He's straight up kind of...
It's true, yeah, he does. He just chops that guy's arm off.
Yeah. Like, that's one of the things I'd forgotten when we rewatched it recently, is that he does, like, he just straight up chops a dude's arm off for being mean to Luke, which, fair, I'm not disagreeing, but, like...
They were being mean. They were being mean to Luke. That guy was like, my friend doesn't like you. I don't like you either. He's just sitting there like, sorry.
He was genuinely very apologetic. This man did not like him at the bar.
Oh, Luke.
It's really hard to imagine him being offensive, because he's like possibly the least offensive person imaginable, except for the like 2 seconds where he's like, I could fly a plane better than you, Han Solo. And Obi-Wan is like, oh no.
I love that though. He's like, we don't have to listen to this. Like he was just like ready to go.
Yeah.
I also love thinking about it now, like Obi-Wan, he's been obsessed with he's probably hasn't used his lightsaber in years and years, because it'll like show he's a Jedi, so he can't use it. But he's got Luke with him, and now he's just like, screw it, I'm using this. I'm using this lightsaber.
I know, he was whipping his lightsaber every opportunity he got afterward.
Yeah. It's like, once you know the backstory, everything he does is 10 times as funny and more sassy. Like, his whole confrontation with Vader is hilarious. His willingness to chop a dude's arm off is hilarious.
Even just like how he calls Vader Darth. He's like, yes, Darth. Like, that's just such shade. He's like, he's not calling him Anakin. He's just like, Darth. It's like
disrespect.
It's like calling somebody like what? Like, it's very, exactly, the disrespect.
I'm gonna be a Force ghost now. You can do what you want here. But also him like negotiating with Han and Chewie and saying, I can give you, what was it, 2,000 now? 12,000 later? He had no intentions of giving this man 12,000 later.
Yeah.
He knew what he was doing. He had to get from point A to B.
Oh, I think
he didn't know any prices.
Yeah.
No, all he had was like some like hologram of like Leia like asking him to help her. Like, he hadn't negotiated any prices whatsoever. Like, he didn't know.
In the alternate universe in which Alderaan is not blown up, him turning up and asking her to foot the bill would have been extremely funny. Like, by the way, I hired this guy. He's like expecting 1,200 credits. If you could just like...
The plan did work though, because didn't Leia foot the bill anyway? She's like, you got your money, go fly off. Luke gets really angry. Like, I thought you were my friend, but I guess you just wanted money.
Yeah. I think we should talk about the kind of the trio, because I think they're the other like massive heart of the film. I just wanted to add, one of my favorite things I read was how terrifying Carrie Fisher was in her initial like screen test, because she came and she was 18 and they were like, yeah, she was the most terrifying 18-year-old we've ever seen, because apparently she was like extremely severe, and they were like, well, so we want you to look younger, and they were like, we don't know how to make this girl look younger. We're going to have to call Jodie Foster. Apparently it was between her and another woman, and she managed to be more like fun, and she was better at kind of teasing and playing that side of Princess Leia, which is how she got the role in the end, and thank God she did. Although I'm sure the other woman was fantastic. Yeah, but the three of them and their incredible chemistry really, I think, make A New Hope everything that it is. Between the fact that she is terrifying, she's tiny, but like I believe that this woman is in line to run a planet, and I believe that she works in the Senate, and I believe that I'm very afraid of her.
And me. The looks are deceiving. Yeah. This woman was single-handedly running the rebellion alongside, I believe, Bail Organa, her network of people, but this is veering off of A New Hope for a bit. But we've seen Rebels. We saw what she was doing behind the scenes and conning everybody around her, conning the Empire. It was amazing. I mean, Leia is a force to be reckoned with.
Yeah. And I think the interplay really works because you have complete serious diligence and intensity and power in Leia. You have complete dipshit honesty, integrity, and kindness in Luke. And you have fend for yourself, heart of gold, Han Solo. And it's like, these are three people who should not work together. And yet
it's amazing.
It's that moment after Leia's been rescued and they're all walking through the hallway and Leia's taking the piss out of every single one of them. And you're like, this is it. This is gold.
My favorite line of hers in this movie is, could somebody get this walking carpet out of here?
Yeah.
I know that's why you love her, why you love her, Sig. It's because she called Chewie a walking carpet.
And then she just took the words right out of my mouth. They all work very well together.
It's true. And it's the film would not work without them, I don't think. And from what I've read, much of it, they were basing the characters on the actors as much as the actors were acting the characters. So I think we can credit all three of them with turning these characters into the icons that they are today.
They are those characters as much as, they played them.
So, do we have any kind of final thoughts about A New Hope as a film before we start thinking about lightning round questions? I'm curious what you guys think of it as the start of a franchise, as the first movie that was ever put out.
It's a great start. It asked it asked some really interesting questions. It also was a movie that could have stood on its own, which is nice, but it's wonderful that it got expanded. It's a solid entry into a trilogy.
Yeah.
Similar to what Annie said, it's a very complete story in the first of a series. It managed to introduce new people, a new galaxy, new concepts like the Force and Jedi and the dark side. It gave very clear indications of this is what's right, this is what's wrong. It gave you people to care about and to root for, and you wanted them to succeed. And it gave you so much interest that even when the movie ends, you're like, what happens next with them? So I think it's a very great introduction to the Star Wars universe in the time that it was made, and it still holds today.
Yeah. I think that's the thing that's most incredible to me is rewatching that film. It absolutely holds up today. It's still a film that I happily pull out and I would just sit down and watch. And I think A New Hope works in the same way that other franchises that I've really enjoyed and have become really popular have worked, like Lord of the Rings or Harry Potter come to mind, is when you read the first installment in any of those books, you have a really clear sense that you are looking at a snapshot of a much bigger world. And Star Wars has that feeling right from the very beginning. You watch A New Hope and you're introduced to all these new people, but you understand that there was a Clone Wars and there were Jedi and they're now gone. And you understand that the Empire came from somewhere and that this is a small collection of rebels, but they're we've seen only one planet that was represented by one senator in a larger, collection of senators. And you have this sense of how big and how actually developed this world is. And it feels real. And I think that's what makes something really great, because then it makes you want to find out everything else about it, which is how we are sitting here having a Star Wars podcast, because if it was a complete film that answered all of the questions, there'd be nothing to talk about.
Yeah.
Yeah, and there's more to be told.
Yep.
Far, far away. Right. If you have any final thoughts on A New Hope, speak now or forever hold your peace. Otherwise, I'm going to ask you some lightning questions.
Lightning away.
All right. First question. What is your favorite scene from A New Hope? Annie.
The cantina. That's the first thing that came to my head, so it must be it. It's just so iconic. The music, as soon as you walk in, it's sort of like Luke was living this life of a farm boy, and it's like he enters the place, and it's just this underworld. It's just like new life he's going to enter into, like getting into trouble with Obi-Wan Kenobi, and it all starts brilliant there. But that music is iconic. Yeah. I love it. Like I never get tired of it. It's just, I mean, how cool would it be to like sit at the bar at that cantina in Mos Espa? Yeah,
I would be nice.
That is my one thing. If Luke. I ever go there, is be nice to Luke.
I would, yeah.
Be nice to Luke. Right. Favorite scene in A New Hope? Flowers.
My favorite scene is when they rescue Leia and Luke charges into her holding cell and is like, oh, takes off his helmet. Sorry, I'm Luke Skywalker. I'm here to rescue you. And Leia's response is, who?
He gives his whole name. He's like, I'm Luke Skywalker. Like, who does that?
Nobody asks, man.
I love how she's so impressed. She's like, you're really short. I don't know who you are. And then he's like, oh, Ben Kenobi. And she's like, Ben Kenobi, get me the hell out of here.
I know. And then meanwhile, you have Han running interference where he's talking to the trooper. He's like, negative. Everything's fine here. Don't come in. Blast it. And he's like, boring conversation anyway. That whole scene is just amazing.
Yeah.
Those are both excellent choices. And to be honest, the cantina was on my list as well. So I'm going to go with the moment Luke uses the Force when he's being chased by Vader in that pathway and shoots into the Death Star, and it goes in the hole-in-one. And it's the moment when he turns off his computer and everyone's like, you know, what are you doing? And he finally connects and he trusts. And I think that's one of the first times that he really connects and becomes the person that he is eventually going to be by killing a lot of people who are on a massive murder machine. But like, I think for me, it's like, it's one of the best scenes in the film. Although I would also give the cantina scene a massive shout out.
I want to add the brilliance of your scene choice. Is like, the very next shot is Vader spinning out of control. Just,
yeah.
He has to get his,
that's terrifying.
He has to haul himself out of there lest Han Solo like fire his butt.
I actually, like, the more that I watch Star Wars, the more I cannot watch any scene with Darth Vader in it without laughing, like, which is really not the reaction you're supposed to have, but he's so funny.
He's hysterical. He's one of my favorite characters for being both intimidating yet so ridiculous. And hilarious.
There are so many moments in A New Hope specifically that just get, like, when he walks in and all the like people on the rebel ship with Leia have been killed, and he just stands there with his hands on his hips looking so unimpressed. It just gets me every time.
I know. He's so silly. And him being like just this looming, just one more shout out in A New Hope where he's in that meeting with all of the admirals.
Yeah.
And he's just this looming figure, and then he's like, I find your lack of faith disturbing. I know. It's like talking about the Force, and everyone's like, who brought this guy here?
Well, especially because he stands in the back of that meeting, like stands uncomfortably in the room, heavy breathing. And it's just, he's like the worst boss. You're like, you try to have it's morning, the donuts are out, you're just trying to get through this meeting. And this guy's standing in the corner, force choking people.
Starts choking someone. Tarkin's like, dude, just stop, man. This is not the time for this.
Yeah. Tarkin's
so tired of him.
Yeah.
Like, he was just like rolling his eyes the whole time, like, oh my gosh, Vader, like, can you not today, please?
Can you? It was like those boards of like last incident. It was like 12 days, like 3 years since Vader choked somebody on the starship.
Yeah. I always like to play when you're on any Imperial ship is spot the guy in the background who works for HR who's having some kind of meltdown of having to pick up yet another Vader-related complaint.
Yeah, they're having a field day with the amount of paperwork that they have to do.
Yeah. Oh, Vader. Okay. Lightning round. Question number 2.
Oh my god, that was just one question.
There are 3. I'm proud of this one. All right. Flowers. F, marry, kill. Han, Leia, Luke. Go.
Oh my god. Okay. This is shockingly easy enough for me. F, Leia. Marry Luke. I'm so sorry, Han Solo, but you're dead. That's me.
Do you want to provide a rationale, or does that speak for itself?
Luke is a wonderful man. I would be very secure in a marriage with him. Leia, I want her on my good side, but alas, she is too busy to marry. She's running a whole, republic. I mean, let's just be real. Like, Luke is not in the politics. He'll have time to come home and bring the bread. Han, I'm sorry. There's just no other rationale other than those are my 2 best, and Han just got the short end of the stick.
Because this is a podcast, I feel compelled to point out the level of despair on Annie's face right now.
I can't think of a tougher one than this, quite honestly, because I just don't even know, man. I love Luke Skywalker to death, but there's no way I could. I love this man, okay? I love him, but there's no fucking involved with Luke Skywalker. I'm sorry.
That's very fair.
But how do you have a marriage with no sex?
Lots of people do that.
I mean, but me? I don't.
No, that's fair.
I think we know who you're killing, Annie.
Yeah. It's okay.
Who am I killing?
Well,
I mean the 2.
Okay.
We need your final answer. I'm going to press you.
I'm gonna have to go with what Flower said. I can't think of another rational. I don't know though. I don't want to kill Han. I love Han.
You don't have to kill him. You could marry him.
Marrying Han sounds like the most not fun in the whole wide world.
Yeah, I agree.
I've been married to one gambler. I don't need to be married to another one. So you know what? I guess kill Han. I'll marry Leia. I want to be the spouse of a politician. I think that sounds interesting, and of an actual good politician. And let's teach Luke.
How to use his lightsaber.
Luke some instruction. Yeah, exactly.
Right, so we're deflowering Luke.
Yep.
I feel bad because I was going to kill Han, but I feel like I can't now. He's died twice, and 3 times if you count.
Poor Han.
So I will keep Han alive. Which this presents a problem, really. But I kind of feel the same as Annie about Luke, and I can't imagine banging Luke. I would marry Leia because,
of course,
I feel like she's the catch of the 3. I mean, Luke is a farm boy. I don't want to live a farming life. He later becomes a Jedi. That is cool, but they're not doing the marriage thing most of the time.
Nope.
I feel like Leia's a catch. She's eventually going to run a republic. I'm disregarding what happens there, but I also think she brings a lot to the table. She's currently...
with you by her side.
Yeah, she's running a rebellion. She seems very competent. And I work very well by being told what to do, and she feels like she would do that. So I think we would make a very good couple. So I'm going to marry Leia. I will sleep with Han because I feel bad for him. Because he's
my
gosh. Which leaves... And if Luke dies, he becomes one with the Force and hangs out with his dad. So I'm going to kill Luke.
You got this.
I felt bad doing it, but that's my answer.
This is, I mean, you've killed Luke Skywalker.
I killed Luke Skywalker. Me and Ryan Johnson now have something in common.
God damn it.
What's awkward about this is I was going to say you killed my son, and I remembered that I married him in this scenario.
Yeah, you did.
So it's a little awkward for me right now.
So his dad, is also your son, which makes things very confusing in your family lineage. And I have
this is a terrible question. Should never have been asked to me.
Yeah, sorry. This question was very mean.
I mean, you don't want to murder the chosen one. That's why
You know what? I'm going to double down on my answer of why I married Luke, and here's why. Sig, you said that you like being given orders of what to do. Mm-hmm. Now, I love giving out orders, and Luke is somebody who will be like, yeah, okay, yeah, sure, whatever you want.
Yeah. No, I think he would make an excellent husband.
Yeah.
I get that. I am on board with your choice. Shall we move on to the final question?
Yes.
What is your favorite piece of set or character design, Annie?
I really love the Millennium Falcon. When I was growing up, I thought that the Millennium Falcon was just so cool. To such a great place to hang out, because when you're a kid you really love these enclosed spaces, inside of a blanket fort or something. Mm-hmm. The Millennium Falcon was the ultimate blanket fort. And just hanging out with your best friends, except it's in space and you can go anywhere that you want basically, and you can travel through hyperspace, and it was just it just seemed like the most fun thing ever to me.
Yeah.
Yeah. I definitely, yeah.
Flowers.
Now this might get me in some trouble because we're good Jedi people here. But honestly, my favorite piece of set design was the Death Star. I find I found the walls, the panels so fascinating. It really makes you think that you're in some kind of massive ship. And this is, maybe a little spoiler for our next episode for Empire Strikes Back, but I read the design for Vader's ship was supposed to be 16 miles, right? And you think about the size of a Death Star, you think it's supposed to be the size of a small moon. It's there's this, they did a lot of effort in making that look realistic, and they had ports of where their TIE fighters were coming in, and I just thought the design of the Death Star was fascinating.
Yeah. I think it's a good choice.
Good engineering.
Yeah. And there's something that it is legitimately terrifying. A lot of the Empire stuff is. And part of it, I think, is the sound design when those ships come out of hyperspace terrifyingly. But
that's one of my favorite. Yeah.
Something aesthetically that's really, really done well. I'm going to go with R2-D2. Mostly because he's a little garbage can, and they're what we're going to do is find someone who will fit in this garbage can, and then we're going to make him sit in the garbage can and drive around. But I do think that the design of it is really clever. It's different than a lot of C-3PO is kind of what I envision robot of that era, especially if we're talking about inspiration from Flash Gordon and that kind of stuff. Whereas, and I think they did draw on The Day the Earth Stood Still and a couple other things like that. But R2-D2 is just that screams robot to me, but they managed to give this tiny little garbage can so much personality. The design, the flash, the way the buttons flash and his little arm appendages and everything about it just works. You understand what this droid is saying without it saying anything. And I just think that it's really, really cleverly done.
Oh, it's the sounds that they used. When he's questioning something, when he screams.
Yeah.
You also know when he introduces himself. It's dun, 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 dun. They gave him a whole language that we don't speak, but we kind of understood what he was getting at.
Yeah. Well, we have successfully made it through a discussion of A New Hope.
Thanks for tuning in to the Kyber Collective. If you like what you heard, please give us a like. And if you've got something to say, drop us a comment below. Both of these help make us easier to find for other fans and are the best way you can support our work. If you'd like to keep up to date with our episodes, you can subscribe. And you can always talk to us on Twitter at Kyber Collective. We'll be back with another episode in 2 weeks. And until then, remember, the crystal is the heart of the blade. The heart is the crystal of the Jedi. The Jedi is the crystal of the Force. The Force is the blade of the heart. All are intertwined. The crystal, the blade, the Jedi. You are one.